We've got some clarity regarding the status of Evander Kane's injury, and we saw the first version of Oilers hockey hit the ice in Penticton last night. I'll talk about both of those things and more, but first, please, we're not too far off 2,000 subscribers on Oilers Digest, so help us hit that mark. Okay, so to kick things off, the Oilers will be without Evander Kane to start the season, and that's because Kane has opted for surgery. Evander Kane set to undergo a procedure to address a lingering sports hernia issue that's been bothering him for a while. The surgery reportedly scheduled to take place within the next 10 days. Now, this injury has been bugging Kane for quite some time. He revealed that he'd been dealing with it all year long, and it eventually had caught up to him. Everybody's remembering this back in the Stanley Cup final. He missed 5 of the 7 games in the final in the series against the Florida Panthers. Last season, Kane scored 24 goals, 20 assists across 77 regular season games, but I think it was pretty obvious that the injury was holding him back. Again, it was a down year for Kane, and a down year with, of course, the news of the injury coming out all of a sudden. Everything kind of makes a little bit more sense because, you could see it on the ice. Kane's pace dropped to its lowest in years, and even though you could tell he gave it everything in the playoffs, he put up 8 points in 20 games, it was pretty evident he was playing hurt. Now, as far as the surgery goes, here's kind of where things are going to get a little bit tricky. Kane's absence raises some questions about the salary cap situation. Of course, it was going to. How much LTIR discussion has there been in the NHL in the last couple seasons? So Edmonton currently have just under $1 million in cap space. Kane's $5.125 million AAV is still on the books in Edmonton. And according to Stan Bowman, Kane could potentially land on long-term injured reserve, which, if Bowman's able to put him on LTIR at the right time and get the money available to him, it could free up the cap space in the short term. But there's a pretty big catch because the Oilers, no matter what they end up doing with Kane's cap space in the interim, they need to be prepared to bring him back whenever he's ready to return. Of course, we've seen times where players have missed the entirety of the regular season and been back for playoffs, but the front office has to kind of keep in mind that Kane, at the end of the day, might very well be healthy again long before the end of the regular season. So they have to juggle the potential acquisitions with having Kane's cap space in mind. So it's really no easy task, especially with the cap crunch being what it is. But like Bowman said, if Kane is out for at least 24 days or 10 games, the Oilers can dip into the extra cap space. And that really, at the end of the day, could be a blessing come trade deadline, if that is where it all goes with the Evander Kane injury. So the big takeaway here is, of course, that Kane's health is the number one top priority, and the timeline for his return is still completely up in the air. But once he's back and healthy, he could have a huge impact for the team. Time is obviously going to tell how quickly his recovery goes. Sports hernia surgery recovery is usually a 6 to 12 week process. Switching gears to some more recent action, the Oilers rookies kicked off the 2024 Youngstars Classic against the Vancouver Canucks rookies, and the effort was definitely there. The result wasn't what the Oilers were hoping for. Vancouver winning Game 1 2-0. For the Edmonton Oilers, the standout was goaltender Nathan Day. He was so solid in net. He made 28 saves. It wasn't enough as the Canucks rookies, of course, came out on top thanks to a shutout from Nikita Tolopilo on the other end. Despite the loss, Day had some really strong moments between the pipes, especially early on. Before we get into the highlights, Nathan Day's a 19-year-old who will go back to the OHL this year. He was a 2023 6th rounder by Edmonton. He played a starring role in this game, so I just wanted a tiny bit of context established on who this guy is before we get started. In the first period, Day made an excellent save early on. Atu Ratu, one of Vancouver's top prospects, tested him. Day kept things scoreless through the first 20 minutes, but Vancouver started taking control as the game went on. Jonathan Lekura-Maki looked really dangerous for Vancouver. Nathan Day did a pretty good job against Lekura-Maki for most of the game, but Edmonton created their chances as well. They could have had a lead 1-0 in this game. Don't make any mistakes about it. This rush from Dalen Wakely was probably the best chance of the first half of the game for the Oilers. Wakely's a 2024 6th rounder, and he's going to be an AHL rookie this season for Edmonton. He did a really good job to use his speed and size to get to the net. He just couldn't force it home. Day stopped everything in the first, but Max Sasson was eventually the man who opened things up for Vancouver. Day makes the first save on this rush here too, but he's not able able to steer the rebound away from danger. Sasson puts in the rebound, and it's 1-0 Vancouver. And the Sasson goal gave the Canucks a quick spark. They had the next handful of chances, and Day did really well to shut the door through the second period. Vancouver really, in the second, could have scored a few more goals after their first and put the game out of reach of the Edmonton Oilers, but that's not what happened. Day did a really good job, and Edmonton came pretty close to tying the games themselves late in the second, but they couldn't get the puck behind Tolopilo. Early in the period, Christian Felton picked up the puck in the middle of the ice, and Nate Corbeil was caught back completely flat-footed. Felton walked around him with ease, and again, Day's able to make that first stop, but Felton had the available rebound bounce back to him, and he cashes it in to make it 2-0 Vancouver. The Oilers and the Canucks would trade great chances right after the goal. Neither team could score. You saw Lekuramaki hit the post, and then Day made a couple very solid saves. But by the time the third period was in its later stages, it was pretty obvious that it was Day against the world. The Edmonton Oilers didn't have any wind left in their sails, and Day did a pretty solid job from there to keep the game looking pretty respectable, but it ended 2-0 Vancouver. And again, these young stars games are good to see, but chances are more players on this team are not on the roster. It would be surprising if probably any of these guys made the top 12 forwards or top 6 defensemen for realistically either of these teams. Vancouver have some pretty high-end prospects as well, but with, of course, the Edmonton Oilers and the Vancouver Canucks both being where they are as franchises, they're both teams that going into the 2024-25 seasons, they're looking to be competitive to compete for a Stanley Cup. And for the Vancouver Canucks, of course, their competitive window, they were definitely pushing for it, but it seemed like it finally opened last season, so their prospects are a little bit more stocked up than Edmonton's. The Oilers, of course, have been pushing. They've been a competitive team in the NHL for at least the past 5 seasons now, so their prospects are a little bit thin. So chances are these players that you're seeing on the ice here, they're more likely to be an impact on the AHL team. But again, I can pull up dozens of examples of guys who had a strong training camp. They started out in the AHL, and then whether it be an injury, whether it be a suspension, whether it be anything, a series of injuries, a series of absences anywhere in the lineup, these players, huge performances in these rookie young stars games, they stay in the minds of the Edmonton Oilers team, so that when those available spots open up, somebody that performed very well in these kinds of games might get elevated into that role. Don't forget that Matthew Savoy, who definitely could make the Oilers' first night roster, is on this young stars roster. They've got some other guys as well that could make impacts, and the standout in game 1 was Nathan Day. Chances are you're going to see a standout in every game for these Edmonton Oilers. So there's still a lot of hockey left for these young guys, and it's all about learning and improving game after game after game. Next up, Edmonton plays Calgary tonight at 8:30 in Penticton. The Calgary Flames, kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum that the Edmonton Oilers are in, so it'll be interesting to see. Calgary, of course, the moves they made last year marked, at least the indication is that the team is going to start a rebuild, even if nobody's going to come out and say the word exactly. So the Calgary Flames prospects are going to be pretty interesting to watch. The Calgary's putting together a group of young players, so there's a chance that game tonight might not be one you want to miss. Edmonton Calgary tonight at the Young Stars. Thanks so much for watching.